Alright, today we're talking about the Founder's Quickshot and updated perks for the Thrasher. And I do mean updated. I will not be doing a complete overview of the Thrasher for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, the Founder's Quickshot is essentially a clone of the Thrasher. If you're not aware of these weapons already, they are essentially identical, but the Quickshot has a seriously better 6 perk. This is a huge amount of extra damage, and we will talk about it later. And a better 5th perk option where you can slap on a 2nd crit damage perk here. Now, I am aware that I'm showing you my perks that I'm using for this video right off the bat, but I'm assuming a lot of people don't actually click these videos just for the best perks anymore, and you might want to see some gameplay. Not to mention, I will be explaining why I use these perks and better alternatives depending on your playstyle. And part of the reason that I'm not covering all of the Thrasher is the fact that I already have a pretty good video on it here, so this video is going to act more of a juncture. So if you just want the Quickshot best perks, you're in the right place. If you just want the Thrasher best perks, then it depends on your schematic. If you have Causes Affliction or Slowed and Snared or any other 6 perk that's not the stacking crit rating perk, then you can check out the video in the description below. It's a great video. I covered a lot of the reasons why the Thrasher is kind of the best SMG in the game right now, and I show a lot of math and talk about it more in depth, and I get a lot more further into it there. But since that video, they added a new 6 perk where you can up the crit rating. Now, this isn't a brand new 6 perk to the game, but it's very new to the Thrasher, and that does cause for a bigger conversation, which, spoiler alert, I pretty much already had in my Silent Spectre video linked below. I will be getting into it here. I will be talking about the Thrasher, but if you've already seen the Silent Spectre video, it's basically exactly the same perks, but on a different weapon. Now, Beast, didn't you just say that the Founder's Quickshot is better than the Thrasher? I thought you just said the Thrasher was the best SMG. What's up with that? Well, that's kind of a personal thing, and some people have called me out for this on stream and whatnot, and I'm going to explain that I don't really count the Quickshot as a normal SMG. Yes, it's an SMG. Yes, it exists in the game. Yes, it's better than the Thrasher, but it's a Founder's weapon. If you're watching this video or you even bothered to click on it, then you're probably somebody who was a Founder and has the Quickshot, or you're just somebody who's curious. Either way, welcome, hello. But if you have the Quickshot, it means you were a Founder at one point, and as of recording, there's no announced re-release of this weapon. So if you're watching the future and they re-release this weapon, hello, Future Dweller, but as of upload, that is not currently the case. So I don't really like counting a weapon that people can't get anymore and something that was locked behind a paywall as one of the main SMGs, and that's sort of why I put the Thrasher in that king spot. But as you've been seeing, for the people who do have this weapon, this thing absolutely annihilates. It's basically like the Thrasher, which is already an amazing SMG, but better, because the way this 6th perk works is actually very similar to the stacking crit rating perk, except that it adds damage and reload speed, which means it stacks up to 25 bullets as long as you don't stop for 2 seconds, because that's kind of how long it activates. It increases it for 2 seconds, and then it kind of diminishes after that. So long as you keep shooting, it'll stack all the way up to the 42.5% damage bonus that it will grant, and it'll up that reload speed up to 25%. So the downtime on this thing is essentially nothing if you have a reload perk. I also want to add that if you have a reload perk on this weapon instead of a mag size perk, it's my understanding that with the 6 perk active, you will have a reload so fast, under 2 seconds, that you will be able to continually have this boost going into your next magazine. That would be very cool, but I ran it with a mag size perk just so I can maximize that damage output and take full advantage of that extra % damage. But with the extra reload speed that 6 perk grants, you're not going to be spending too much time reloading, and you're going to get right back into the fight. I really don't have too much else to say about this weapon. It performs very similar to the Thrasher. It's essentially a carbon copy, like I said, and if you're going to be perking this thing, let's talk about it. Right off the bat, as you could have probably guessed, these are what I personally consider to be the optimal all-around best perks. But there are a couple of caveats here. Now, if you go a fire rate perk, like crit rating, crit damage, fire rate, that is going to be a higher total damage output, because fire rate tends to have a better bonus than a crit damage perk, but you're going to be turning this weapon into more of a bullet hose than it already is, meaning you'll be sacrificing damage per bullet for damage per second. So it's my understanding that a crit rating, crit damage, fire rate, mag size sort of thing would be the highest damage output, assuming you want to have a nice to have perk. Obviously, a damage perk instead of the mag size would be higher damage per bullet, but because this is a clone of the Thrasher, it actually has, I believe, a base 25 mag size, which is really small. You definitely want this mag size to make this thing even kind of viable, and that extra damage perk isn't really going to help that much anyway. As I've explained in previous videos, like the Silent Spectre video linked below, the amount of bullets that you're losing by not having a mag size perk means that damage perk is actually kind of less overall damage output in the long run than a mag size perk would be. I'm going to link this Spectre video. I think I worded it a lot better in there, but suffice it to say, If you're shooting continuously against a high health target like a smasher or a mini boss, a mag size perk will actually help you output more damage if you factor in the reload time. I know it's pretty minimal with the 6 perk on here, but that extra damage perk really doesn't help a lot. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is if you're using Totally Rockin' Out. That means that your crit rating is going to be quite nice, and you're actually not going to need a crit rating perk. You can roll triple crit damage on this thing. Yeah, they went balls to the wall with the Founder's weapons in this game, so you can go triple crit damage, Totally Rockin' Out, and this thing will absolutely annihilate everything that you shoot at. And that is definitely an option if you really want to go that way. Yes, I went and I put on a Totally Rockin' Out loadout just so I could finally show you guys how well a weapon performs with Totally Rockin' Out. For those of you who might be new to the channel, I very rarely use Totally Rockin' Out. It's a very, very high damage buff for a very brief period of time. I might make a whole video on why I don't really prefer it, but I do concede, as always, that it is a very, very nice damage bonus, and if you're somebody who prefers that, triple crit damage might be the way to go. Now, I always like to mention as a nice little disclaimer that if you don't like crit builds, you can totally go fire rate damage and fire rate double damage in this case, and that's going to be about the same output as a crit build, but as I already mentioned, if you're going to go away with the crit damage perks, you're pretty much going to have more bullets achieving the same DPS. So if you want to have the same damage per second and not have to reload as often, meaning you'll be spending less bullets per enemy, a typical crit build, as you see here, is probably the better way to go. And as for the element, it depends on what zone you're in. Mine is water because there are a lot of fire enemies all around. Every single mission seems to be fire right now. So in the future, if that element changes, I'll probably switch to fire if they're all nature enemies, and I'll switch to nature if they're all water enemies. So if you don't care about elements or you can't afford to be swapping it around like I am, then you can definitely throw an energy perk on here and this thing will shred everywhere. If you are somehow a low-level player who has the quick shot and you have just kind of gotten into the game, you took a long break maybe, physical will work definitely up until like mid Canny Valley. It's about late Canny, early Twine and beyond where most of your enemies are going to become elemental. So physical will be the best damage output so long as you're not shooting against elemental enemies. But as I said, once you get into those later zones, you're definitely going to want to look into the specific elements. If you are somebody who doesn't know about elements, I'll link my elements guide in the description below. That definitely explains everything a lot more clearly. Now the Thrasher. So if you're not somebody who is interested in the quick shot and you click down in the description or you just watch through to this point, if you have the Thrasher with a stacking crit rating perk, meaning that every shot will stack crit rating up until 15 times, how are you going to perk this thing? So obviously the normal loadout would be like a crit rating, crit damage, and then damage to whatever your 6 perk is. But with the stacking crit rating, we don't have affliction. We don't have slowed and snare natively on the weapon without some kind of hero perk. So I honestly recommend damage to miss monsters and bosses. That's basically the only thing that's going to help you. The impact on this weapon is low like most SMGs, so you're really not going to be stunning or staggering anything. Some of them might be frozen because of like a freeze trap or something, but don't even worry about any of that. You just go with damage to miss monsters and bosses because that's normally conceivably the only thing that's really going to give you any major bonus. Not to mention miss monsters and mini bosses are pretty much the only things that aren't going to die to one magazine from a Thrasher. Even still, you'll find that they'll die to one magazine. And I should note, just for the record, I explained a lot of this in the Silent Spectre video, but I will explain everything kind of sped up in this video just to make sure that you guys are all well informed. And that's that the crit rating perk is essentially the same damage per second. It's a little bit better than the damage to affliction or slowed and snared variants. Now, if you're shooting against a miss monster, it's actually quite a lot better, but the problem is I did my math stacking up to that damage, meaning we don't have a crit rating perk here, and that's kind of diminishing returns. I explained that in the Silent Spectre video, but with the crit rating perk here, yeah, you can shoot all the way up to 15 bullets, and that'll put you at about a 47% chance to crit on the Silent Spectre. In this case, it'll be more like a 37% rather than the normal 38%. So it's going to take you 15 of your bullets just to stack up to the normal crit rating that you would normally have, and it's in that way that you're kind of always starting from zero, always ramping up, and it's not something that I personally prefer. However, once you get going, it is a higher damage output. And just like I said with the Founder's Quickshot, if you do have a fire rate perk here and a crit damage perk, that will be a higher damage per second, higher DPS, but you will be shooting a lot more bullets to achieve that damage output. So I recommend double crit damage, crit rating, in the 6 perk slot, and as always, I recommend a mag size perk as exactly for the same reasons I recommend with the Quickshot. However, our 6 perk is not buffing our reload speed, so you might want to go a reload perk here, but seeing as reloading will clear your crit rating buff, you kind of want to just put on a mag size and run this thing until it's out of ammo. Obviously, if you don't care about either of those and you want to maximize maximize every single bullet, you can totally put a damage perk here. However, I don't personally prefer that, but you can totally do that as it will yield more damage. And of course, for the element, I already explained with the quick shot. You can check out my elements guide in the description below if you guys aren't aware of what you should put on this. But that just about wraps it up for the Thrasher and the quick shot. I'm kind of glad how things worked out here. I've been putting off the quick shot for a long time. I've been meaning to talk about it since it released for the people who got their packs upgraded, and that's cool and all, but it's kind of an old weapon, and it was low on my priority. There were a lot of other things going on, and I feel like seeing as it's so similar to the Thrasher, and the Thrasher got a fancy new 6 perk, and my original Thrasher video was so concrete, I didn't really want to overwrite it. I figured I'd make this video. And as a last point, I kind of covered everything about the Thrasher in the Silent Spectre video. They are perk-wise, the exact same weapon. Obviously, the Thrasher's a little bit better damage output. It's a different weapon, but the perks are identical, and it's essentially the same conversation. So I even felt weird about putting that in its own video. So to combine it with the quick shot, I felt was right, and I hope you guys enjoyed how I did things here. It's a little bit different from the norm, and we'll probably get back to a single weapon in our next video, but regardless, that's how I did things today. If you guys want to grab your free V-Buck llamas, if you're watching this at the moment of recording, which is humanly impossible, unless you guys at the NSA want to go and grab these llamas, I'd highly recommend it. Use code Mista at your checkout, please, NSA, M-I-S-T-A, if you guys want to support the channel a little bit. Obviously, these are free buck llamas, so they're not going to help me, these llamas, but I feel like if you have the code entered in, then you might end up getting something that does support me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys want to become a channel member, you can join with the join button on the channel or join with the link in the description below. You guys get all these nice fancy perks. A lot of those emotes are used in the stream chats, which I'm starting to do more on Twitch, so you guys can follow over there if you guys want to check out the streams. It's just a higher quality, a lot more going on. Channel points are a thing. I got affiliate recently, and we're actually on our track to partner, so you might get a lot more emotes over on Twitch very soon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a nice day. And then